As my classmates have probably identified from my initial introduction forum and the last 2 weeks' posts, I enjoy hunting and fishing. Therefore, the two topics for this week's forum assignment, the impact of dams on fishery resources and the constitutional right to fish, are quite intriguing to me. I'll start this discussion off with my comments on the constitutional right to fish. The short article by Douglas Schinkel that Dr. Amy presented for us to read is quite an eye-opener. Seeing that 16 states since 1996 have adopted a constitutional guarantee to hunt and fish, and 7 additional states in 2014 alone are considering bills to enact this guarantee, it brought me to wonder why the sudden push for these constitutional amendments. Dr. Schinkel specifically states that well-organized animal rights groups and limitations on methods, seasons, and bag limits for certain game species have provoked many hunter advocacy groups to lobby for hunting and fishing as a right. This statement can be evidenced by a very recent article from September 2014 in the U.S. Sportsmen's Alliance website. It presents that the state of Michigan House of Representatives passed a Scientific Fish and Wildlife Conservation Act on August 27th of 2014. In short, this new law provides for states' Natural Resources Commission alone to have the authority to designate game species using sound science, not anti-hunting politics. This law is indicative of many other states' responses recently to hunting and fishing-related ballot referendums that are sponsored by the ever-growing animal rights groups in the nation. I feel that decisions made on how to manage wildlife and fisheries should be left to scientists in the employ of federal and state governments, rather than leave those decisions to a ballot box where sound scientific principles may not be referenced. I believe it is a natural right for citizens to have access to hunting and fishing, but there needs to be sound management principles in the form of season and bag limits in order to promote very viable populations of fish and game. In the second section of this week's forum discussion, Dr. Amy asked us to explain a little about the area we chose for our case study regarding dams and fisheries and the reason for our choice. My case study is on the Parker River in the northeast corner of Massachusetts. This area is indicated by the circle on the map shown. This is an enlarged area of the northeast corner of Massachusetts. The blue river on this map is the Parker River. This area has 6 dams between Boxford, Massachusetts and Plum Island Sound, where the river empties into the Atlantic Ocean. As to why I chose this area, it is quite local to my hometown. As a boy, I remember fishing with my uncles for pickerel and bass in the Parker River, where a large pool is formed before the river flows under the roadway, as seen in this picture. I specifically remember a spring morning when I was 10 or 11 years old seeing small fish zipping upstream under the road. I asked my uncle what the fish were, and he said it was time for the annual herring run, and he took a few minutes to explain to me that the small fish come up the river every year to spawn. I was amazed and still fish that small pond to this day with my son. With these memories in mind, I decided to explore the dams along the Parker River for my case study for this week. There are 2 species that are primarily affected by dams along the Parker River. These include the alewife and the blueback herring. These species are very important as they serve as prey for a number of commercially important fish species. A brief history of the dams and their impact on the Parker River is provided by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration Community-Based Restoration Program. The 6 dams I will be exploring in my case study were constructed in the early part of the last century. Each dam does have a fishway, but 5 of them were constructed in the 1930s and the last in the 1960s. During the 1970s, the populations of blueback herring and alewives were very healthy, but in recent decades, 5 of the fishways have deteriorated and 1 is not functional. In my case study this week, I will present some arguments as to the best way forward in returning the Parker River to a situation that will sponsor a healthier population of spawning blueback herring and alewives. This is a list of my references. I look forward to seeing my classmates' comments on the forum posts.